It's the radio guy, Mike Prince. Welcome to another episode of the Mike Prince Show live right here at the Open Mic Broadcast Network. Of course, it is our mission to come to you each and every day to bring you news that you can use. Our social media handles for Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter are all at the Mike Prince Show. The YouTube channel is Open Mic Broadcast Network. Website is obnradio.com. And our 24-hour dial-in message line, 713-570-6736. And without any further delay, we're going to jump right into tonight's episode. We have a special guest to join us, the head football coach of the FAMU Rattlers, Shotgun Willie Simmons. The alignments, or should we say the realignments, have been made. The East has been settled just as the West. We'll talk to him about that. Plans on what will be moving forward now that the stage has all been set. We'll get caught up on some local Texas high school results from Friday night football action and a whole lot more. So we might as well, as they say, boogie on down and let it get started. Hopefully that everyone is doing okay, safe and sound, as we try to be snug as a bug in a rug here at the Open Mic Broadcast Network. Collegiate football season has officially been kicked off. A lot of gaps. Then some are having second thoughts right now. Should they have waited just a little bit longer before the actual decision to terminate fall competition? I say no. I say absolutely not. You have to make decisions, and the old folks used to say, well, don't come out in the wash, we'll come out in the rinse. Hold to your guns and let this thing work its way out. You'd rather be safe than sorry. A lot of rust with these games that have been competing. How about what HBU did against Texas Tech? Stood their ground. They came up short, but they stood their ground. Could that be due to the lack of reps to lead towards the season opener? Or could HBU be an up-and-coming program that you have to keep an eye out for? Time will tell, just as it does in everything else. We took a poll throughout this week indicating who do you think would be the dark horse for the Southwestern Athletic Conference. We know the hype about Bethune-Cookman and FAMU coming to the SWAC, being put in the East. But we asked, who do you think would be that sleeper program that could come up and bite a few teams? The choices were University of Arkansas Pine Bluff, Texas Southern University, and Mississippi Valley. And University of Arkansas Pine Bluff led the way. 53% of you that participated said that they would be the dark horse team. Texas Southern, a distant second. So it will be interesting to see how all of these things pan out, because you have to play the games, right? That's what we do it for. You got to play the games. So what we're going to do, we're going to get ready to hear from our guest on tonight, Shotgun Willie Simmons. But before we do that, we're going to take us a little break. And once we get that break, the next voice we'll hear will be that of Shotgun Willie Simmons. You're listening to the Mike Prince Show live. Keep it where you got it. We'll be right back. Attention all coaches. Whatever your sport is, we want to tell your story. Dial our 24 hours, 7 days a week message line at 713-570-6736. Leave your game results, team results, and player results on our 24-hour message line, 713
570-6736. Have sports, will travel. The Open Mic Broadcast Network, serving the community through faith and athletics, the voice of student athletics.
Brazos Valley Schools Credit Union has 13 different locations to better serve you. Locations in Rosenberg, Missouri City, Katy, College Station, Bryan, Brenham, and Waller, Texas. For more information, you can contact them on their toll-free number, 855-391-2149. Or you can send an email to information@bvscu.org.
Results from Friday Night Football high school action within the Waller County and local areas. The Bay City Black Cats victorious over the Wharton Tigers by the score of 42-31. Iola Bulldogs 12 and the Lovelady Lions 28. Snook Blue Jays 20 and the Thrall Tigers 26. Sealy had no problem with summer rest. The Tigers 45, the Bulldogs 6. The Gidding Buffaloes no problem with the Taylor Ducks, victorious by the score of 46-12. Stratford Spartans 28, Belleville Brahmas 30. The East Bernard Brahmas 42 and the Bowling Bulldogs 9. The Brazos Cougars victorious over the Burton Panthers by the score of 18-12. Blanco Panthers 34 and the Anderson Shiro Fighting Owls 9. The Mahia Black Cats victorious over the Navasota Rattlers by the score of 38-14. And in volleyball, the Hempstead Lady Cats got swept by Burton 3-0. Those were your scores from the Waller County local area high school athletics over the course of the weekend. Be sure to join us each and every week for our local high school scores. If you or your team would like to be highlighted on the Open Mic Broadcast Network, simply dial 713-570-6736. Leave your results, information, and featured players highlighted, and we'll put them right in the mix. Serving the community through faith and athletics, the Open Mic Broadcast Network, Prairie View, Texas.
And welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Mike Prince Show Live as we try to bring you news that you can use. Our next guest actually needs no introduction here to the network. He's been what we would consider a friend to the network, even though he fusses at me every now and then and say I need to have him on more. But I said now that he's back in the Southwestern Athletic Conference, I think we can make that happen. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome back Shotgun Willie Simmons. How you doing, my man?
I'm blessed, Mike. How you doing, Doc?
I'm doing good, man. You guys staying safe out of harm's way, I'm assuming?
We are. A hurricane kind of passes by a little bit southwest of us, but all we got was a little rain. So thankful for that.
Yes, sir. Very thankful for that, and glad to hear that all is well on the home front. A lot of things have been happening of late, but first and foremost, before we get premature, technically and legally, you guys are still a part of the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, correct?
Right. July 1 will be the official start date for our transition into the SWAC.
Okay. And with all that being said, we know that there are some scheduled games for the spring. I'm not aware, and maybe you can bring us up to speed. Had you guys worked out any type of schedule as of yet?
We haven't definitively worked out the slate of games, but we do have a tentative 8-week schedule, very similar to the Southwestern Athletic Conference's schedule. The only difference is I think the bye week is a week different because of the timing of the basketball tournament. So same format, 6-week conference schedule. I think the opportunity to play a 7th game out of conference, and then the possibility of a championship game as an 8th game. So kind of the same format as the SWAC, just hadn't solidified a slate of games yet to know what the dates of competitions will be, or the opponent, so to speak.
Okay, now excuse me if I might seem a bit pushy, but aren't you guys kind of dragging your feet instead of getting these games scheduled?
Well, a little bit above my pay grade, brother. I know they're meeting and talking about it. I had a meeting with my athletics director last week about it, and they're in discussion. So I would assume that we'll hear something here in the coming days or weeks about what the dates what the games themselves will be.
Okay, very good. Now, we do know that officially collegiate football has kicked off, and this past weekend would have been probably another epic showing between the Rattlers of Florida A&M and the Jaguars of Southern University. Did you have any type of withdrawal symptoms when the date came?
Honestly, the days have kind of run together for me. So it wasn't until I saw a post that said that we'd be on our way to Baton Rouge right now that it really kind of sunk in. So I've tried to stay busy, just not think about it, try to find ways to keep our guys engaged and locked in so that we don't go through the type of withdrawals that you can, realizing that there's some people playing football and others like us that are not.
Okay. Now, when you see that, are you second guessing the decision, or are you okay with the decision to hold back and then just wait to see how the science and the medical part plays out?
Yeah, I think it's twofold. Obviously, we love to be playing right now. We're competitors, and to see some people participating and being able to go out there and compete and win games, makes you feel a certain way. But at the same time, every day you still see the death numbers going up, the number of cases going up. You still see outbreaks on campuses. And truth be told, we don't, as a collective body, as FCS schools, don't have the resources to follow the testing guidelines that are set forth by many of the conferences right now. So maybe there was a chance that we could have pulled it off, but it would have been very, very difficult for many of us financially to be able to pull off playing with the amount of testing that we would have had to do on a weekly basis.
Absolutely. And here's another little caveat that the Power Fives have snuck into some of their clauses now that many people might not even be aware of. They're now going to make it a mandate that if you're going to play that quote unquote money game, you would have to test your players according to the rigorous schedules that the Power Five programs are testing their players. And when the dust settles, you're going to end up either being in the hole or playing for free when you go to play these money games now.
Yeah, there's a lot of money that goes into testing. You're talking about multiple times a week, testing basically the entire football team, the support staff, the coaches. I mean, you're talking upwards to probably 150 tests per week at anywhere between $100 and $200 per test. I'm a pretty good math guy, but I'm not going to do the math off the top of my head. But you're talking about a lot of money per week to be able to try to get through an 8-9 game football season this fall. So I think it was a wise decision, not only for the safety of our student athletes, but also fiscally. I think it was a wise decision to postpone the fall games and try to see if we can pull it off this spring.
Okay, we're talking right now with Willie Shotgun Willie Simmons, however you want to identify him. He is the head football coach of the FAMU Rattlers. With the opportunity to be from the fans' perspective, although you always have your coaching cap on, were there any particular games that stood out to you in a pleasant surprise way or a shocking surprise way the past weekend?
Well, obviously, being that I cut my teeth in the coaching profession as a member of the Sun Belt Conference, it was great to see 3 Sun Belt teams knock off 3 Big 12 teams. Louisiana Lafayette beat our ranked Iowa State team. I actually coached with Coach Billy Napier, their head coach, when I was a grad assistant at Clemson. So great to see a friend and colleague in the profession get a huge win. Arkansas State knocked off Kansas State, and of course Blake Anderson, their head coach, battled through the death of his wife last year to cancer. So it's great to see him, overcome some adversity. And then Coastal Carolina, knocking off Kansas and being that, I played my college ball in South Carolina. Again, all 3 of those schools kind of hit home in their big win. So just definitely excited to see the Sun Belt really doing their thing because it's a great conference. I enjoy being a member of that conference. And again, it's always good to see the underdogs pull off the upset. There were other ones as well, but those three really stuck out of my mind.
Right, and when you see that, I've been echoing this for the longest, and people thought I was crazy, but I always said if you could ever attack the Big 12 conference, you had a better chance of battling against Kansas, also against Texas Tech. I didn't think Iowa State nor Kansas State would be one of those, but I always felt good about that. Does that make you start trying to blow dust off your compass and try to head that direction if they're willing to take you guys on?
Well, I'm not sure it'll be that easy, every time you go. Obviously Kansas has been a program that's, struggled over the last few years, and even bringing in Les Miles, who's been a proven coach. It's a very difficult place to win. And again, you're talking about some pretty good teams in the Sun Belt. Louisiana Lafayette had an 11-win season last year. Arkansas State has competed for their conference championship probably for the last 5 or so years. And so, again, those are they're upsets, but they're not shocking upsets from the simple fact that I think both of those teams are teams that could very easily be ranked near the end of the season. And then Coastal Carolina, beating Kansas. Again, obviously Kansas still has some work to do. This is only Coach Miles' second year. And, you're trying to, change their whole system as far as what they do on both sides of the ball. So I wouldn't say it was just as easy as picking up the phone and calling a Big 12 team and saying, hey, if you're not Texas, Oklahoma State, that we can run in there and pull off a victory, because those are good football teams. They still have 85 scholarships. They still have budgets that trump ours, 10 to 1. And, they're still able to recruit a high caliber kid. So I think we can be competitive, and obviously if the opportunity presents itself, we'd explore that. But there's some more regional teams where financially it'll make a lot more sense. Because, again, you hope to get a win at the end of the day against a team like that, but you're really doing it for your recruiting base. You're doing it for the financial gains that you can get from those type of games. And you don't want to be really flying across the country for FAMU to play a Kansas. I mean, that's a chartered flight, and this wouldn't really make sense. Yeah, we may be able to go over there and pull off an upset, which would do wonders for our program, but fiscally, it'd make a lot more sense to play the number of schools that are in the Florida, Georgia, Alabama, South Carolina, North Carolina region, as opposed to going halfway across the country.
Okay, very good. And I've always said those games were games that were marginal competitive levels that you had a fighter's chance to win. So, and then you get a pretty good payday. Now, you made the mention of what Miles has to deal with at Kansas, and it's obvious that the budget that they would have, as you mentioned, is 10 times larger than the average FCS budget. What are some of the challenges that are unseen that you have to induce a new culture in the case of a Kansas or another historically program that has struggled?
Well, a lot of it has to do with the culture. And then again, I say this with a forked tongue. Obviously you hear the term football school, basketball school. And you look at a lot of the schools in the Southeast will be considered football schools because the bulk of the resources are poured into football. Alabama, for example, Clemson, where I played, the head coaches, you look at the salaries of the head coaches compared to their basketball counterparts. And I think that alone speaks to, not to say what's most important, but really what drives the revenue for those respective institutions. Well, at Kansas, it's basketball. The head basketball coach at Kansas probably makes twice what the head football coach makes. And that's because basketball is the driving revenue generator for that athletics department. And so if it comes down to it, where they're going to pump their resources, they're going to pump it into basketball. Not saying that Kansas doesn't have good football facilities, not saying that they don't have a full staff and, the things that most other FBS Power 5 programs have. But when you look at the recruiting, when you look at the brand, you think Kansas, the first thing you think is basketball. You don't think football. When you think Clemson or Alabama, you think football, obviously. And so when it comes to recruiting, you're having to overcome a lot of those challenges. Of course, those schools in the Big 12 and the ones in that footprint, use that to their advantage. And if they're competing against Kansas for a student athlete, it's very easy for coaches to say, hey, if you're going to go somewhere where you're going to be the second big dog on campus, if you go to Kansas, because that basketball player is going to have a lot more, clout than you are as a starting quarterback. You're the starting point guard for the Kansas basketball team. You're probably a lot more popular than the starting quarterback for the Kansas football team is. And they're probably one of the few schools in the Big 12 that can say that, because all the other schools are more than likely football schools, so to speak. So I think that's just one of the biggest things that they battle there, and they're not in a state that it has a plethora of overabundance of talent as far as speed and things like that. So they have to dip into Texas. They have to try to get into Florida and some of the other places in the South to build the speed that they need to play in the Big 12 conference, which is a conference that has a ton of speed. And so I think there's just some challenges that obviously they faced for a very long time. And, Coach Mangino was able to go in and put some pretty good teams together. But outside of him, I can't remember anyone since I've been coaching that's really been able to make Kansas a perennial contender in the Big 12 conference.
You have to go back to the 30s.
Wow, didn't know it was that long ago.
Yeah, it's old Sam say it's been a long time, brother, a long, long time. We're talking right now with Shotgun Willie Simmons of the FAMU Rattlers. For those of you who made it come in, and then they're talking Big 12, but we're just talking about the dynamics of what some of his former comrades have done. And speaking of former comrade, it's no secret, Coach Hobson, has parted ways at Mississippi, Southern Mississippi. Have you had a chance to speak to him about what's going on, or was this news to you as well?
No, I actually haven't spoken with him. Obviously, he's a friend of mine, and I sent him a text and, told him I was praying for him and his family. And, he responded and, said thanks. And, we shared, sentiments, but, haven't really had a chance to speak with him about the circumstances surrounding his surprising
departure,
resignation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it was a shock to all of us. Obviously, I saw their first game, and they got beat by South Alabama. It wasn't their best showing, wasn't their best performance. But didn't see that coming. Obviously, one game into the season with all of the challenges that COVID-19 has presented, I was kind of thinking, like most of us, that coaches would probably get a pass this year. It'd be just one of those weird years where you say, hey, do you fire somebody now or non-renewal contract this year, or do you give them a legitimate chance to have a full year to show what they can do when things are semi back to normal? Because this year's brought about its fair share of challenges. So didn't anticipate that coming. Again, at some point, I'm sure we'll talk. And, if he feels comfortable divulging some of the details about, why they parted ways, I'd listen. But I've been in this profession long enough to know that you don't pry. And when people feel comfortable, they'll tell you. If they don't, then they won't. So,
absolutely.
If we ever talk about it, it'll be a confidential conversation, between two friends. But I pray that he and his family, are doing well. That they have a plan. Jay, unfortunately, lost his dad earlier this year. Dr. Hobson, who was a great supporter of us during our time at Alcorn, and continued to be a supporter of his son and his teams until his passing this summer. So, his wife lost her mother, last football season after a football game. So, they've dealt with their fair share of adversities, not to be putting his business out there like that. But again, just, life hits, and just want to, again, let him know that we're thinking about him. We're praying for he and his family. And, times like this is when you really find out who your friends are, who the people are in your corner, because a lot of people are called asking what happened. And that's not the most important thing. The most important thing is not what happened and why he left. The most important thing at this point is, how is he doing mentally? How's his family doing? And how's his team, his former team and the coaches doing? Because, when the coach leaves, it affects everyone.
That's right.
It doesn't just affect that coach. It affects the team. It affects the coaches. It affects the program. So there are a lot of people right now that are being affected by Coach Hobson's resignation last week.
And the one that stood out to me was Coach Cedric Thomas, who you coached with at Alcorn. He took the head coaching job at Pine Bluff, and it seemed like they were really headed in a new direction, then he goes and joins the staff there. And that was the first person I thought of. Like, I pray that he's going to be okay through all this. So, like you say, it's always a domino effect in all of this stuff.
Yeah, no question about it. And obviously Coach Thomas and I, we talk a lot, and we talk a lot about his decision to go to the Southern Miss. I was supportive of him doing so. And, in coaching, you roll the dice, because, again, when you're at those levels, unless you're at the Power 5 level, which many people don't understand, most of us as assistant coaches are coaching without multi-year contracts. And so, you're kind of tied to the head coach. And if he stays, you stay, unless he makes the decision to get rid of you. But, those guys aren't signing 2, 3, 4-year deals like some of the Power 5 coaches are. So if a head coach gets fired at, Texas or Oklahoma, well, that assistant coach still probably has 2 years left on his contract that the university or the boosters are required to pay. At Southern Miss, that's not the case, I'm assuming. I haven't spoken personally about that, but I'm assuming, just like most mid majors, that's not the case. Some of those guys, they'll be looking for jobs this time next year if the new coach, whoever that guy is, doesn't retain them. So, again, that decision has ramifications that extend far beyond Jay Hobson and his family. There are 9 other families, 10 other families, rather, that are significantly affected by this decision, let alone the support staff, and then those players that they recruited over the last 4 years.
Yes, sir. It is always as they say, a roll of the dice, as you made reference to when you go into this coaching profession. But, it has its rewards too, and it has its good days as well as its bad days. We're talking right now with Coach Willie Simmons of the FAMU Rattlers, soon to be part of the Southwestern Athletic Conference, but still yet a while longer under the guidance of the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference. And I'm pretty sure that you hearing from your former boss the move that was made at Jackson State, deciding to go another direction from Coach Hendrick. And the rumor mill is burning up, my man, burning up. Your name was actually thrown in there for a second, but that died down pretty quickly, about the replacement of being that of Deion Sanders. And some are saying that it could be made mention as late or early as this week, and more than likely by the end of the month. What's your reaction to that?
Well, it'd definitely be exciting. It would make for some exciting football if prime time's the head coach. I think anywhere he lands the head coaching job is going to bring a lot of publicity, a lot of good publicity, and maybe even some not so much. Like they say, all publicity is good publicity, right? So, but Deion has always kind of been a larger than life figure. As a player here at Florida State, during his time here, once he went on to become a dual sports star as a baseball player and football player in the NFL, and even post football, being on the NFL Network and having a reality show and, his social media presence. I mean, he's just a guy that's always kind of been in the spotlight, and typically head coaches try to keep their personal lives pretty private. And so I think that'll be interesting to see if indeed there is truth to that, whether he lands a head job at Jackson State or anywhere else, if he'll be able to maintain that and keep his personal life private, like many of us try to do. So, but I know Ashley Robinson well. He gave me my first opportunity as a head coach right there at Prairie View. You know him well. And the one thing I do know about Ashley is that, he's going to have a plan, and that he's going to be very thorough in his decision making. His vetting of any potential head coaching candidate. So I can't speak to the rumors because, again, that's not my place to. Like I said, whoever he names as the head coach will be a guy that I think that he's done his homework on and research on. He'll feel like that guy's the best one to lead that program. So it'll be interesting to see. I mean, I kind of have my ears to the streets, just like most other people do. And once they make an announcement, I'll be interested to see who that person is, because, again, Ashley's not only a former boss, but he's a personal friend, and I want to see them do well. Obviously, except one game a year starting next year. So, but that's a part of it. But it definitely will make some make some headway. The SWAC's doing some great things already. I think Dr. McClellan's doing a phenomenal job of branding and marketing the conference for bigger and better things. But you bring in a marquee name like that to the fold, there are going to be a lot of eyes on the SWAC or wherever he ends up coaching. Like I said, I do know he has aspirations to be a head coach. So wherever that might be, I think he comes with a lot of hoopla, a lot of fanfare, and hey, we'll see what happens.
Boy, look, can you imagine the SWAC media days and the press conference between Jackson State and a Southern University or Grambling? Whenever, man, that would be off the chart. Just the price of admission alone would be something to witness, man. So we, as you say, we shall see. We just, as they say, we kicking the can down the road of what they're saying, what could be. We're on the Mike Prince Show live right here with Coach Willie Simmons. Coach, I got to take a break. Can you hang with me through the break, man? And we talk about.
I sure can.
You sure can. We're going to talk about this new look East, man, and everything else. You listen to the Mike Prince Show live. Keep it where you got it. We'll be right back.
Broadcasters come into our lives on radio and TV, bringing us information and entertainment. Broadcasters are there for us, but who is there for them when they fall on hard times? The Broadcasters Foundation of America provides financial assistance to broadcasters in acute need due to a critical illness, accident, or other serious misfortune. If you know of a broadcaster on the air or behind the scenes who may need our help, please share our message. Visit broadcastersfoundation.org.
Your education, your health care, your community, your future. Your vote counts for many things. Take control. Get registered. Get educated. Get out and vote. Learn more at www.vote411.org. This is a public service announcement from Open Mic Broadcast Network.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth! I have a greater responsibility than you can possibly fathom. You don't want the truth because deep down in places you don't talk about at parties, you want me on that wall. You need me on that wall.
Join us for a daily episode of the Mike Prince Show right here at the Open Mic Broadcast Network. At 17 cents a day, you can make a huge impact on our local and regional high school and college student athletic coverage. We provide local talk shows, live game coverage, and much, much more. But we need your support to continue to move forward. Visit our website today at obnradio.com. Click on the PayPal button, which is safe and secure, and become a listening partner today. Will you become part of the Open Mic Broadcast Network team? Visit that website at obnradio.com and become a listening partner today. Serving the community through faith and athletics, the voice of student athletics, the Open Mic Broadcast Network, Prairie View, Texas.
And welcome back to the Mike Prince Show live right here on the Open Mic Broadcast Network. For those of you who are not aware, we do have a 24-hour message line, 713-570-6736. You can always drop in your thoughts, comments, questions, or concerns. We're going to continue on now with head football coach of the FAMU Rattlers, Shotgun Willie Simmons. And before the break, we were talking about the possibilities and the what-ifs of Neon Primetime Sanders coming to be a part of the conference. But one thing we do know for sure is that the FAMU Rattlers and the Bethune Wildcats will be officially part of the Southwestern Athletic Conference July 2021. And, of course, it has been finally laid out. We knew logically that Alcorn would be the more than likely one to come over toward the West. But it got some people in an uproar. And some say that the West has just got that much more difficult. East has become difficult with two new additions, depending on who you ask. They say there's been a gift wrap for a certain squad that we won't call out. But the old saying is you got to earn it, and it's all going to start July 1st. How you feel about where you landed in Alcorn going to the West, sir, being that you were a part of that institution?
Well, like you said, obviously we knew when we when we came to the conference and Bethune followed us shortly thereafter, that there'd have to be some reshuffling. The 5-5 format would have to become 6-6. And so obviously the team on the East would have to go to the West, and the two most logical schools geographically were Mississippi Valley State and Alcorn State. And so kind of just went back and forth saying which one made more sense. And obviously the conference did the same thing and decided that Alcorn made the most sense to go over to the West. And obviously you take the team that's won the East 5 straight years and you move them to the other side. There, of course, to be naturally some ruffling of the feathers. Some people are going to feel a certain way.
Is that what we call it? That wasn't no ruffling. That was a plucking of the whole duck.
Well, but I think it makes for a conference that can potentially have a lot of balance. Like I said, I know, the last few years, if you just look at a small sample size, which the conference has been in existence for a very long time, if you look at a small sample size of the last 5 or 6 years, yes, it does look like Alcorn State going to the West was a move where you shifted all the power to one side. But if you look at historically, Jackson State has been a program that's performed extremely well in this conference. Alabama State, obviously has some of the best facilities in all of FCS football. Connor Mannion has done a phenomenal job in his short time at Alabama A&M. I think 2 straight winning seasons. And so, it looks like a conference now that has, considerable balance. I think if you ask Alabama State fans, and Alabama A&M fans, and Jackson State fans, they feel slighted by people saying that, oh, well, you've taken the big dog and moved them over to the other side, because, those schools have traditionally been very, very competitive in the SWAC. And so I think it's going to make the brand a lot better. There was never going to be a perfect solution, but you have to make a decision one way or another, and then it'll play itself out. So I think if, you look at the SEC, for example, people talk about the SEC West and how competitive the West is. Well, it wasn't always that way. When I was coming out of high school, it was the East. Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, those schools were the top dogs in the Southeastern Conference. And now it's shifted over to the West. So I think it goes in cycles, and, it's going to be competitive. There's going to be some fierce fights in the East between us and Bethune, obviously. The Alabama State and FAMU are, a couple of miles away from one another. And then you look at Southern and Alcorn, they've always been fierce rivals, and, Alcorn Grambling, same thing. So I think it just makes for a much more exciting league, and there are going to be a lot of people following to see kind of how this thing shapes. So no perfect formula, but I do think that they made the right choice to move Alcorn to the West for travel reasons, to keep everyone's budget as solid as possible.
Oh, no doubt about it. It does make sense. But when you look beneath the surface, and we know that historically there have been 2 different styles of play between the MEAC and the SWAC. Some would say that the MEAC has been a tad bit more physical. They put more emphasis on stopping the run and just bigger guys on the front lines on the offense and defensive side. And when you look at the background of the teams that now make up the East as far as their head coaching, you have Ely, who had some work done at Morgan State. Connell Maynard, what he done at Hampton. Then you have yourself and Sims coming in with that mentality of the Mid-Eastern Athletic Conference, if you allow me to put it in that form. Do you see that you guys would still want to play that quote-unquote MEAC brand of ball, or were you trying to become a hybrid to adjust to the style and play for competitive sake now that you're coming back to the SWAC?
Well, that's a great question. And I think if you look at FAMU and Bethune, we've been at our best when we've played more of a SWAC brand of football, if that makes sense. We're both in Florida, and so we're in one of the most talent-rich states in the United States. We play football year-round because of the weather, and we have an overabundance of speed here. And so when FAMU has been winning championships, it's been because of their speed. and not necessarily their size. When Bethune-Cookman was winning championships with Jenkins, yes, they were physical. Yes, they played great defense, but they were always one of the most dynamic teams in the conference on special teams. And how do you do that? You do that with speed. And so I think us coming over to the SWAC will be a lot more, the styles will be a lot more similar than maybe if a South Carolina State or a Norfolk State, a Morgan State, one of those teams that are a little bit more northern, the North Carolina A&T, who really does try to build their team off of size. You know, a couple of coaches have tried that at FAMU, and they weren't very successful, you know, trying to recruit a bunch of tight ends and fullbacks and big linebackers and big defensive linemen. That really hasn't been a recipe for success at FAMU, at least. And so I think when you see our football team coming to the conference next year, when you see Bethune's team coming to the conference next year, you won't see two teams that have massive offensive and defensive linemen, you know, and big, huge wide receivers. You're going to see fast teams that our styles are a lot more similar to what the SWAC has already been playing than what people may realize.
Okay, and so with that being said, would you agree then that the SWAC style of play is more finesse?
I wouldn't necessarily call it finesse. I do think just because of where the SWAC is located with the states, you're talking about Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, Texas, and then obviously there was one school in Arkansas. But those four states have a ton of speed. One thing they don't necessarily have is an overabundance of size, so to speak, when you're talking about the big, massive defensive linemen. And when they have them, I mean, every school in the country is coming to get them. And I think that's why you'll see a lot of times the SWAC plays with a lot more undersized offensive and defensive linemen. You know, smaller guys that are tenacious, that have quickness, quick twitch fibers, and things like that. Whereas in the MEAC, you look at where their footprint is outside of Florida. You're talking about South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, you know, the DMV, and even Delaware. So a lot bigger, you know, linemen that you're able to get at those places. Maybe not as much speed. And then the weather. You know, I even had this conversation a couple of weeks ago with you know, some coaches just talking about the difference in the leagues. I think if people make it out of between the SWAC and MEAC, obviously because they're the two HBCU conferences at the FCS level, Division I level. But you look across college football in general, the Big 12, it's kind of the same thing because of where they are. They're in the South. So it's a lot more speed, a lot more spread. It's fast-paced basketball on grass. Whereas you get more into the Northeast, where come late October, November, you're going to be playing in windy games, snowy games. You know, the weather's not very conducive to you playing a spread style of football. So you better build your team where you can stop the run and be able to run the football, because that's what you're going to be doing in late November. And so I think because of where we are with the weather that we're able to play in the SWAC, where it's going to be still relatively warm in late October, even early November, you're still going to be playing in 75-degree weather where you can spread the ball out, you can throw it around the yard, you can do all those things. I think that's why the brand of football in the SWAC is a lot more wide open as opposed to the kind of ground and pound football that you should find in the MEAC, because you do have to consider that come later in the football season, you're not going to play in weather that's going to be conducive to you throwing the ball around 40 times a game.
And to that very point, sir, is one of the reasons why I believe as a whole, for the most part, we struggle outside of conference, because we are designing ourselves, of course, for the conference that we are. We want to win the conference championships, but when we play outside of the conference, we have struggles. You know, we have the talent for sure, but I think the styles of play come into a big time decision making when it comes to the final scores of some of these games. And the conference I'm thinking of in particular are your Southland Conference, your Ohio Valley, and even some Missouri Valley. We know that on the FCS level, the cream of the crop is going to be North Dakota, right? And the Missouri Valley style of play. That, of course, the location where they are makes sense to what you just said. But is there any possible way, and you know you offensive guys are always cooking up stuff in the lab, that you could almost create like a hybrid? I know everybody does this spread, but to be honest with you, Coach, everybody doesn't have the spread talent to be running the spread.
Well, I think that's a whole nother conversation, and that's probably a whole nother show. And again, obviously, we can do that because how we do, but I think there are a lot of things that go into why we as HBCUs haven't performed as well in the last few years against our PWI counterparts at the FCS level. But you look at the playoff situation. If we were able to go because of our conference affiliations and waiving the automatic bid, most of the time, even when we played those teams, we were on the road. And so, how many times did a Southland or a OVC or Missouri Valley Conference school come to the South, come to the Grambling or Southern or Florida A&M to play a playoff game? It hadn't happened. And if it does, I think you see a totally different outcome. Sam Houston State came to Prairie View my last year there, and we played them very, very competitively when they were one of the top teams in the country. The very next year, Dooley's first year, they went up there and really probably should have beat Sam Houston State. So they played them extremely well. But many people probably remember Stephen F. I think came to Prairie View back in 2014 or something, and Prairie View whooped them up pretty good.
Well, and not only that, but everybody got fired Monday. I'm not exaggerating either. The entire staff was let go Monday. I think that had to be something next to the last game of the regular season. And they was like, oh, no, we're not going to have this. We are not going to have this.
Yeah, so I think now, and I'm glad to see more SWAC schools, MEAC schools scheduling FCS games, not just guarantee games against FBS opponents. Last year, South Carolina State opened the season and beat Wofford, who ended up being who was a top 10 preseason ranked team and ended up being a playoff team. I think they won their conference. North Carolina A&T beat Elon. And so you look at it. I think A&T the year before went down to beat Jacksonville State, and so head to head over the last 3 or 4 years, I think the HBCU conferences and member schools have done relatively well against PWI FCS during the regular season. So we all are aware, we all understand when we get those opportunities that we need to play well, because we do know that there's a stigma out there, there's a perception out there, and we want to make sure we dispel that myth that our programs aren't of the same quality as schools in those conferences. Our coaching is not of the same quality as the coaching in those conferences, because it's frankly just not true. I will put a Broderick Fobbs, a Fred McNair, a Sam Washington, a Buddy Pugh up against any coach at the FCS level. And I'd put some of these coordinators, a Cedric Thornton, those guys that have done a great job. I put them up against any coordinator at the FCS level, and because we're just as good. And so I hope we continue to do it, because, again, I do think that we all share that burden. And every time we play one of those games, I think as a collective body, we're all pulling for that HBCU team to go in and knock off. I'm not even going to say pull off an upset, because it's not an upset to me when it happens, but go in and knock off, a FCS, PWI conference school, because it does increase our brand. So hopefully it'll keep happening, and I'm hoping that FAMU is one of those schools that schedules one of those games that pretty soon.
I do understand that. And I tell you, if there's ever been a great disappointment for me personally for this 2020 campaign, was the fact that we would not be able to witness North Dakota and North Carolina A&T meet up. Man, I was looking so forward to that game, and I think it was one for all of us. Even though I was a little upset with A&T leaving the MEAC, going to the Big South, but it is what it is as far as that is concerned. But the anticipation that was coming from that one game alone, could you imagine the pressure on both sides, knowing what's the unwritten rule at stake going into coach a game like that?
Well, yeah, of course I do. And obviously, it was a game that we all kind of had circled that we were all looking forward to. And I think they're scheduled to play either next year or sometime in the coming future. I just, I wanted to make sure, or I want to make sure when it does happen, if North Dakota State's still the team that they've been over the last 8 years, having won 7 national championships, that we don't judge ourselves against the number one team in FCS football. I mean, A&T's been the class of HBCU football over the last 5 years. We all know that, and they've been our shining star. But again, I wasn't going to just say, hey, this is our Rocky against their Drago. You know what I mean? Because North Dakota State has a winning record against FBS schools over the last 8 years. So, let's make sure that we I ain't gonna say crawl before we walk, but let's keep things in perspective. A&T preseason is ranked number 22, I think, right? A little bit ahead of us. A&T's preseason, North Dakota State's preseason ranked number 1.
Right.
And we wouldn't expect the 23rd ranked team in the FBS football to go in there and knock off Clemson. So again, we got to keep things in perspective and keep them relative. And I know it's a game that we were all looking forward to, but I'm kind of glad that we didn't put all our chips in that basket, saying, hey, if A&T go in and knock them off, it would be phenomenal if they did. But if North Dakota State was able to somehow win the game, or even kind of run away with it, that it might have hurt our narrative a little bit more than it helped us, because it's that same, I told you guys y'all couldn't play with us. No, let them play the number 22 team. let A&T play the 22 team, then 23, and let's see what happens before we jump up and try to gauge ourselves against a team that's won against 7 of the last 8 national championships at this level. This team, for all intents and purposes, probably should be an FBS school. They're not going to do that. NCAA probably should make them do it. But, again, they're on a little bit different level class-wise than everybody. They're kind of the Clemson, Alabama of FCS football. It's North Dakota State, then it's everybody else. Just like right now it's Clemson, Alabama, and it's everybody else. So, but it's going to happen eventually, and we'll all be tuned in to see what the outcome is.
Yes, sir. And not that you put all your marbles in that basket, but it's just like it's a strike and a statement for all other institutions involved, because that there's quality coaching, there's quality student athletes, there's quality games and styles of play that are played. But this is the grand stage to prove your point. And even if they came up short, the fact that you're competitive, I think that's more important than anything. You want to be competitive and then stay competitive enough to be in the running to have a chance to win toward the end. And I think that's a fair assessment to be looking for when you have a game of that magnitude.
Yeah, if that's what we were looking to do, then I'm all, I agree 100%, and I didn't pay much attention to what the talk was leading up into the game, because obviously I had my own team to prepare, to try to prepare, get ready to win. But if we're looking to say, hey, we go in there and we play the number 1 team in the country and we have a great showing, we show that we're well coached, we show that we're schematically sound, but we get beat, then hey, that's a win for us. Then I can live with that. But when you look at a team that has one of the top, has a first round projected quarterback, at the FCS level, has the top offensive lineman at the FCS level, has multiple guys that are going to be playing on Sundays in the coming future. Again, measure apples to apples. Look at the coaching versus the coaching. Look at the scheme versus scheme. Look at the adjustments versus adjustments. Don't necessarily look at the overall raw score. And that's even when we play those guaranteed games against FBS opponents. That's what I'm always preaching to my coaches and to my team. Yes, we want to win. Every game we prepare for, we prepare to win. But the thing that chaps my fanny the most is not that we go and get beat. It's if we go and we play bad football. We have a bunch of unnecessary penalties. We go in there and we can't get lined up. We end up with 12 guys on the field or 10 guys on the field, or substitution issues. Just looking like we hadn't practiced football. That's the thing that really upsets me more than just losing the game. So I think I share those sentiments with most of the coaches at this level, that when we play these type of games, because it could get out of hand. We played arguably the number 1 team in the state of Florida last year to start the season, with 8 of our guys basically starters not playing. So you think we're going to play a team that was ranked the highest ranked team in the state of Florida the first game of the season without 8 of our starters and expect to come out of there with a victory? Yes, every rattler on the chat line was talking about how we should go in there and be competitive and win the game. And we went and got them bad, you know. But again, when I watched the film, I wasn't so upset that we got beat, you know, pretty handily. I was more upset that we didn't play as well as we were capable of playing. And if we had done that and had Ryan gone in and set his feet when he threw the football, if had our receivers run the right depth of routes and not cut routes short or ran routes too deep, and, you know, we had just looked in sync, maybe we get beat 40-14. You know, maybe we get beat 38-17 or something like that. And it's a more respectable game than to go in there and just really play outside of ourselves and, you know, get shut out. And so, you know, whenever that game happens, like I said, and that won't be the only time that you know, a team that has a lot of, I guess, excitement, which A&T had, goes and plays one of those games. I mean, soon it's going to be a FAMU, or A&T, an Alcorn State, a Grambling, a Southern, or even a Prairie View. You know, at some point it's going to be one of us going to play one of those type of games, and it'll be the same type of narrative going into it, that, you know, give us a level playing field and let's just see what happens. And I think that's going to really go a long way in showing America that the SWAC, the MEAC, the coaches and players in these conferences are just as good as anybody else. And that's all we really want. We just want a fair opportunity to show that we're just as good as our white counterparts, if not better. I mean, in many cases, I think we're even better.
Well, you won't get an argument out of me at all, my friend. As we're getting pressed toward the time, we're talking with Shotgun Willie Simmons of the FAMU Rattlers. We've gone through a whole lot of detailed conversation, and we talked about the East being realigned. And I got to ask you this question. I wouldn't be Mike Prince if I didn't ask you this question, man. As everybody is echoing, man, they just gift wrap this thing for FAMU in the East. And man, that's a shame. You know, you still have to contend with Bethune-Cookman. And with that being said, do you feel any added pressure with that statement that FAMU should have a cakewalk in the East?
No, because again, I think it's a false narrative. I've been in the SWAC. You know, that's one thing people know. I spent 6 years in this conference, in this amazing conference. And, you know, when I was in the East was where it was. You know, Alcorn State, we made ourselves a contender, you know, starting from the bottom. But Jackson State went to 2 straight SWAC championship games during my time there. Alabama State was winning 8-9 games a year during that time. And you know, Grambling was trying to figure it out at that time. You know, Prairie View was still trying to figure it out. Texas Southern, Southern even, you know, before Odom took over, you know, wasn't very good. So then when I went over to Prairie View, then it kind of shifted to where Grambling really came back to becoming who Grambling traditionally has become. Southern, you know, really came up and became a great program. And then in the East, Jackson State took a step backwards. Alabama State took a step backwards. And Alcorn maintained their level of dominance. And so, again, this whole thing is cyclical. I mean, I don't expect for Jackson State to be a team that is going to be down very long. Again, I know what type of athletics director they have in Ashley Robinson. I mean, he hired me, and I know he's going to pour every ounce of his being into that program to get them the resources that they need, to get a coach in there who can get them, you know, turned around on the right track. I know what type of resources that Alabama State has, you know, the type of facilities they have, the recruiting base they have. I mean, I'm aware of these things. You know, I know what type of traditional program Alabama A&M has put together over the years. Always a tough, physical, hard-nosed football team. And Coach Maynard has gone in and done exactly that. And I know what type of sleeper team Mississippi Valley can be. You know what I mean? And so for people to think that the Eastern Division championship would just be gift wrapped with a Rattler or a Wildcat on it are sadly mistaken, because there's going to be some fierce battles, some great competitions that go on that side. Just like, you know, Alcorn's going to go over there and going to go toe-to-toe with Southern and Grambling and, you know, Prairie View, Texas Southern, and Pine Bluff. So the league is as strong as it's ever been, and that's a great thing. And so I'm excited about the brand of football that's to come on both sides. And I think the championship game is going to be a barn burner. You know, because I think both sides, whoever comes out of those sides, will be very, very battle tested. nobody's going to have a cakewalk. I truly believe that. And so I look forward to preparing my team to go through a rigorous SWAC schedule starting next season. And I look forward to seeing a lot of great crowds because the SWAC has always been the number one attended conference in the country. And that has just increased by bringing a team like FAMU in, who is one of the best traveling teams in America.
Well, my friend, I'm definitely looking forward to it. As always, we seem to run out of time, but it just leaves another chapter to be fulfilled by you and I. It's always a joy and a pleasure, man, to hear from you, to chat with you. You continue to take care of that family. And I heard you say, ain't no pressure. Okay. And if they say, if you need a plumber, that's because pressure didn't burst the pipe. And you say no pressure over here. And I'm hearing you loud and clear, my man, loud and clear. We appreciate you, man. We want to thank those that joined us in on tonight's episode of the Mike Prince Show Live. Don't forget, you can check us out each and every day right here at the Open Mic Broadcast Network. Our social media handles for Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, all at The Mike Prince Show. The YouTube channel, Open Mic Broadcast Network, and our 24-hour dial-in message line, 713-570-6736. I must exit stage left. My time is far spent, but until the next time, you guys be blessed, and we'll see you on the other side.